Hello, welcome everybody. We're so glad to see you. Welcome to this launch of Susie Wild's Windfalls, which is being published by Parthian. I'm Zoë Brigley and I was editor on this book, so I'm really glad to be introducing Susie today. Welcome everyone. I just want to start with a little bit of housekeeping. To access the automated captions for this event, you can use the CC button at the bottom of the page. And so just go ahead and feel free to use that. If you want to ask a question, you can write it in the chat, and also feel free to respond to poems and write any comments about those in the chat space as well. Don't forget that you can buy Windfalls at the Parthian website. We're going to post links to it as well in the chat. This event is being recorded and may be published on YouTube later, just so you know. Finally, this event is being hosted by the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. We want to take the time to remember that this institution is built upon the lands of the Seneca Cayuga people, among others, who were displaced as part of a history of genocide and land seizure. You can find ways to support current day communities at the Native American Indian Center of Central Ohio. And now that we have all that out of the way, let me make a proper introduction to Susie and this wonderful new book, Windfalls. We're really delighted to have you here today to share in hearing her read some of the poems from the new book. As editor on the book, I wanted to start by saying how much fun it was to read these poems. And I just enjoyed so much seeing Susie's unique style shining through in every line. And it also seems clear to me that she's writing to a particular kind of experience for women and people generally, which is often sidelined. I love the joy in these poems and the defiance and the refusal to be cowed or bowed. One of the things I really noticed as well is the very strong observational detail of place, but also very keen observational writing in terms of people and their feelings, their quirks, their eccentricities. The parade of carnivore boyfriends, which Susie is going to read about, is really interesting as it opens up thinking about masculinity. Windfalls has some really wonderful poems about nature. The detail is mesmerizing, and I love the humor of poems about neighbors during lockdown. While Susie also addresses some serious issues. The poems are interested in thinking about the complexity of marriage, how marriage is something that you create actively all the time as a work of love. I also love the speaking voice, someone fiercely kind and endearing, seeking adventure and fun. And I think it represents a generation of women who want something else, not necessarily a domestic suburban life, but a sense of freedom. I like the echoes throughout the book, images that occur and reoccur, like fallen apples, trees, birds, meat eating, flesh, art, risk, and fighting or being a fighter. It was interesting to see a story unfolding across the collection as a whole, which seemed to me to be about women's labor and everything that women have to carry when they're caring for men, but also the solace that we find in nature, and the joy of small things. And I found that really beautiful and inspiring. Ultimately, for me, Windfalls tackles the world of risk that we have to engage in to find love. The worldly wise narrator realizes the darker side of experience, the precarity of things, but never stops seeking joy. I also appreciate the complexity of people in this book, like the damaged boyfriends who can be both vicious and kind. And also like the marriage poems later on in the book, which understand that union as a work of love, always being negotiated, always in progress. And so with that, I'm going to hand over to Susie, and the structure that we have is that Susie's going to give a reading from the first half of the book. We'll have some questions, and then we'll have a reading from the second half of the book and time for a few more questions after that. So thank you so much for coming and welcome, Susie. We can't wait to hear you read.
Oh, thank you, Zoe. That was such a lovely introduction. I'm blushing underneath all my foundation and powder. So I'm going to read from Carnival Boyfriends, which is the first section of the book. And I'm going to start with the first 3 poems, actually. So I'll just go in. The first one is called The Liminal Hours. A chase of messages illuminates my screen through the small hours. Did I just see you? I'm sure I glimpsed you dancing. That green dress, the way you tilt your head to admire the view. These banshee hauntings, my poor abandoned dates, lost lovers. What made them to conjure me? The grade of rain, do I slink, do I down a familiar side street in one port city or other? Leave as they lean against a crowded bar, raise a glass to their lips, too far, too drunk to catch more than a flick of my strange coloured hair. Do I lean into another under an umbrella, linger to clinch a kiss, taxi vanish? Where are the visitors who turned up at my door with bunches of flowers? Those who called me fire, aubergine, flower girl. Those who held my hand over a Sunday matinee film or cheap wine carafe. I see a queue of them waiting for a gig or a bus or me. Some mouth words that mist in the rain before they reach my side. Where are the ones who ghosted me, who swear they glanced me in the liminal hours? All those I've yet to spook. Okay, so the next one, I guess, is the title poem of the section, called The Carnival Boyfriends. The Carnival Boyfriends vary in their attitudes to prepping meat and veg separately, disagree on what constitutes a meal. Boyfriend A cooks steaks during vegan book group. Boyfriend B mopes anemic through morning TV. I did tell you, I stop myself. Prepare all the meals for peace again. Some are lapsed vegetarians, a fad taken up for younger girlfriends before boyfriends C got bored of all the chopping, pans, and fucking wasted time. He chooses takeaways, restaurants, bars where the menu will not cater for us both. They are all complaining. I offer grapes with cheese and crackers, butter a couple of them up. Boyfriend D and E still dabble, but rarely cook. Boyfriend F stocks the fridge with tofu, brings me apples, wake up coffee. He'd rather kiss my flesh than fork steak. I dig for cutlery hidden in socks. I check his hands for knives. So the next one's taking me back to Cornwall, where I grew up and for part of the time I was there, we had a village shop with a deli, and this is a poem that relates to that. The vegetarian helps slice the ham. Mum is wearing her white jacket, white hat, green apron tied in a bow at her back. I stand behind our shop's deli counter, beside her, aged 11 in a green tabard, my mousy hair French plaited, pulled out of school 3 weeks before summer break to help slice the ham. She cannot lift it. She has broken her elbow, dislocated a shoulder. They say she has, that she fell, perhaps from a push by my brother, landed badly. Insists she slipped in the stockroom. So my job, instead of classes, is to lift the joints from their display trays, peel back the cling film of breaded yellow ham, that blush pink meat of honey roast glaze of pastrami sliced thin, and set the machine, switching places to let her operate it, legally, too young to cut flesh, break bodies, yet not much older than him. What am I doing next? Oh yeah, not weed remover. It's another long one. Hang on. Okay, so this is one of the character sketches from the Carnival Boyfriends, or Carnival Boyfriends as it is now. The knotweed remover. I can sort out your problem for you. This stranger in a bar hands me a business card, winks. I wonder how he knows, though I've not seen the knotweed return. I hear it creak in the night. How can I unroot it? Soon I learn his unknotting by day is replaced with ropes after dark. Sometimes you have to tighten first to loosen up. You can't always leave as cleanly as you'd like. Though I wake to nail marks, had to dig out in the gloaming where it haunts, threatens regrowth, invasive. It taunts me, spray, injection, herbicides, stem. It won't leave quickly. He surveys the damage, cracked tarmac, blocked drains, undermined foundations, tries to calculate my decline in value. 20%, 30%. Knot scourge everywhere, but nobody is tying them. Gut, shoulder, all the unlabeled boxes under the stairs. It can take 3 years, so you'll have to be patient and rich. 1,500 for just a small patch of weed. Experts suggest even that is futile. No cure. In the house, in bone, the creaking grows louder. Shoots appear wrapped in a strangle of ropes, their small voices repeating. Untie me, untie me, untie me. Okay, I'm going to do 2 more. This one is called This Is Why We Can't. In trying to become a perfectionist, I forgot how to be myself, how to dress like me, talk like me, object like me, how to laugh. The man had expensive taste and spent too much on the things we didn't need. So if something slipped, washing the dishes, or rolled off the counter, he would shout, "This is why we can't have nice things." Stomp into a room full of nice things, more than I'd ever had before. As I shrank back into the kitchen, into the suds of cleaning up, became less and less and less. Nothing. And then a short and sweet one to finish off. This one's called I Like Your Face. I like your face, he said, but please excuse mine. I have been burning the candle at both ends, and now it is a melt of wax. But you can place your thumbprints here and here. Claim me as your own if you'd like. Mostly, I'm not malleable, but fully formed. Yet there's room at the soft edge of things. There's room for you.
Oh, thank you so much for that brilliant first reading. And I just love hearing these poems read out loud. It makes me so happy because, you know, I feel like I'm very close to them and I'm very enamored with them. And so to hear them read is just wonderful. I can see everyone's responding really excitedly in the chat. And so we have these Carnival Boyfriends who I absolutely love. Every single one of them. They're so interesting. And when you come to Susie's book, you'll find the first section is full of these portraits of different men. And I think it's really fascinating and appealing. And I think maybe it's because it makes us all think about dates that we've been on. And we think about, you know, kind of strange dates, interesting dates, dates we regret, dates we wish had, you know, gone further but never did, you know, all the different kinds of experiences we have when we're exploring and looking for intimacy in relationships. But I think something that came through for me in reading these poems is that casual relationships actually have a lot of intimacy. And I think that's something that sometimes we push to one side or we don't necessarily recognize. That I found it quite surprising to think about that when I was reading your poems. And I wondered what kind of motivated you to start writing these portraits of these, you know, these intimacies that you'd had, which maybe if it was just on a couple of dates or something like that, but still were quite strong in terms of the feelings that you had.
Well, like the Carnival Boyfriends originally, it's as a pamphlet, started out when I was just kind of newly single after being in kind of long-term relationship to long-term relationship without gaps. And I found it very strange to suddenly kind of be fed these lines at a bar, at a party, or just out, you know, it was something I'd been kind of blinkered or oblivious to, or you give off the wrong pheromones or whatever it is, but it wasn't something that was happening to me. And then suddenly it was. And I really wasn't in a place where I wanted to be dating. So the first few that I started writing were really just to amuse myself, I guess. So it's just, yeah, I was trying to write something. I was still going to my monthly poetry groups. And so I was trying to find a subject, I guess, and this just cropped up. But some of them did become short-lived dating relationships. And it is strange in those early days where you do get quite intimate because you talk to each other in quite a different way to the way that you do later on in a long-term relationship, in getting to know a lot of small details about each other very quickly. The same as with friendship or anything really. So it was just quite different to the experience I'd been living for a long time. And so I guess that's what I found fascinating. But yeah, I mean, a lot of them are very much made up. They start with the line or the situation or the description of the person, and then they become something else. So,
yeah. But I think something that's really strong about it is how real they feel. And sometimes I was reading them and I was thinking, oh yeah, I know that carnivore boyfriend. I know that person. And it felt kind of very authentic and real. And I wondered if you could talk about how you go about writing about people. You know, are you a kind of observer of people, do you think?
Oh, I think very much. I mean, I did psychology at university as well. I'm fascinated by people about our kind of quirks and foibles and the tiny things that we just mess up our lives with, or find luck, like very much like the Windfalls title, I guess. Those curveballs that are given to us, and how different personalities react to them at different stages in their life. I'm forever fascinated by that. But yeah, I'm very much a character and place-based writer. I always have been. So it's just what I latch on to. I think I am. I've always been, even though a lot of people think of me as more of an extrovert. I don't know why, because I'm an introvert. I have to hide after festivals and big parties and have a bit of downtime. But yeah, I'm a quiet observer of people, and I've really missed going to cafes or being on trains and buses and just overhearing things and conversations and kind of observing life as it goes on around me. That's kind of my fascination in writing, really. So, and
Yeah.
then trying to work it out as well, working out my own. So.
Yeah, and you have such a strong sense of that in these poems. And something else that really strikes me in thinking about the poems you just read is kind of experiences where women or girls have to sacrifice something of themselves. And I think that those poems are so important, so very important. Like that poem, "This is why we can't have nice things." It just really kind of speaks to a kind of convention where women are supposed to, kind of give up certain things about themselves, and when they're in certain kinds of relationships. And I just felt that it was really important that you were writing about that, and I imagine that that must have been hard to write about too.
Oh, definitely. I think it's a really difficult thing to unlearn when you're quite a caring person, to remember to hold some time for yourself and put yourself first some of the time. Not all of the time. I think like relationships, there's a balance, but it shouldn't be at the cost of you being yourself or doubting that you can be yourself. And that's like the big blacklist of what a good, you should leave that relationship. And sometimes you don't realize that for a long time, unfortunately. But yeah, you should never feel like that, really.
Yeah, yeah. And also, like, another strand which comes up in just a few poems in the book is thinking about girls' experiences of childhood. And there's one poem where it seems to me it's very much about discovering desire and sort of becoming an adult, having adult feelings, just starting to glimpse those. And then the poem you read just now about slicing the ham, and this sense of being on the cusp of, like, being in some ways expected to be an adult, and in other ways not being quite grown up. And I felt that those were important in the context of the collection as a whole, because they sort of look back at the experiences of girls, or this particular girl speaker in the poems. And I wondered if you thought, are there things we are taught as girls that we shouldn't be? Or are there some things that we should be taught that we aren't?
I think definitely it's much better now, isn't
Mm,
it, than it was when we were growing up. Um, I mean, the thing with those poems that you mentioned specifically, I didn't have much memory from my childhood until I started writing my first collection. And there's quite a lot of childhood poems in there.
mhm.
And these were I had glimpses of the memories, but actually they came back a bit stronger as I was writing. And it's a strange thing for me to tap into that childhood memory. But in terms of what we should and shouldn't be taught, well, yeah, we should just be taught to be happy people, shouldn't we? We should be taught about what is and isn't okay, and how what isn't okay in the terms of how you're treated, and how to treat others, and that should just be across the board, I guess. I don't really have a big preach line on it. I kind of feel like I've always felt about all of these issues that crop up again and again, is that, you know, you should just be nice to other people, really, unless you have really reason not to. Sorry, I've been quiet. My voice is a bit croaky. I moved the mic closer. Yeah, that we should, you know, you just should accept other people, really. But yeah, I don't have a good preach. You can do the preach.
No, but I think that's it, kindness and acceptance. And I think that's what the poems are pointing us to, actually. And the speaker of the poems in the Carnival Boyfriends is very accepting and very kind and holds a lot of feelings for the people that she interacts with, and sort of absorbs that and creates this space of caring, which I think is really beautiful and something that's very moving throughout that section. So it's a brilliant opening section, the Carnival Boyfriends, which sets up this kind of interesting interaction with the world of like kind of exploring interrelations with different people and holding space for different people and allowing them a voice in this part of the book. But then you go on to the second section, Windfalls, which is, you know, the title of the collection, which is, you know, really interesting too, because this is where we have a lot of the poems which are about marriage, which are again complex, beautiful, but also complex, you know, just saying it's not, it's Ben there watching. But yeah, and I felt like it was a really authentic and very poignant vision of what marriage is like, and I really appreciated that. And so I think now that you're possibly going to do a bit of reading from that section, and then we'll have some more questions. So if anybody wants to pose any questions for the end, then please write them in the chat, and I'm going to keep an eye on that and note down any questions that I see. And Susie's going to give us some more brilliant poems.
Okay. So again, I'm going to start with the first couple of poems from the second section. So the first one is Nude Smoking in the Dawn Doorway. He stands or leans against the doorframe. Light spills around him, haloing as he moons me, the husband. Inhales smoke, exhales smoke, takes deep breaths, surveys his terraced territory, newly cut trees, soil awaiting seeding. Nude reclined, I watch these in-between hours, neither bed nor morning. We reject time, make our own routines, days and nights punctuated by this. The flare of a lighter, the nude smoking in the kitchen doorway, the taking of deep breaths, surveying. Okay, so the next one I'm going to read is the title poem of the collection. This is Windfalls. Next door's apples now overhang the garden fence above the sunspot where I sit and read in the afternoon. The boughs heavy with fruit flushed by the heat wave, dropping flies as I watch, ignoring the piles of bills before me. Though tomato plants shoot taller and taller, blossoming yellow, new flowers still wilt in the corner. I imagine sitting at the table later, being rained on, each apple a small bomb. The patchy grass, the path, the veg beds are drowning in windfalls. alive with insect feeding and decay. So the next one I'm going to read. So I live really near to Cathays Cemetery in Cardiff, and I've been walking there quite a lot, as well as the local parks, over the last year. And they have a little map of famous people that are in the cemetery that you can go and visit if you want to on their website. This is one of the graves. She's more commonly known as Balloon Girl in Cardiff, and a number of artists have done work about her, including Catherine Ashhill, Bryony Gothen, and Katie Minnick's novel, The Aeronauts, I think. I might have got that, or is it The Aerialists? It's one of the two, is forthcoming, which is inspired by this girl. But I've always loved the story, and I've passed the grave so many times that I ended up writing this poem. So her performance name was Mademoiselle Albertina, and that's the name of the poem. Mademoiselle Albertina, in memory of Louisa Maud Evans, 1906. There she is in the balloon, her self-sewn sailor's suit, straw hat, all 14.5 years of her rising for the parachute descent on Cardiff outskirts. Her rapturous return to the exhibition crowds, this horse and carriage heroine. Watch as the balloon girl careers over Newport Road, speeding as the wind drops and lifts her to a greater height. See how, at 5,000 feet adrift over the Bristol Channel, she unclips the hope that the parachute will save her. How it spreads like silken wings, carries her from land, hits water. How 30 soaked pounds of cloth and wood weighs her teenage frame, drags her deeper, deeper, drowned. The body washes up near Nash 3 days later. A failed leap of faith. This aeronaut is grounded in Cathays, her lichened tombstone paid for by the public who watched her rising, rising, and watched her fall. Here's a marriage poem. Everyone got married. He was a cupped hand to the cigarette she'd quit, but taken up again, only to burn the time they spent like candles. She cast lines and nets, caught wishes. The glint of beaked mackerel, the silver lining to a flesh-pecked bone. Beyond their boat, stars were strung across the late sky. Bauble-eyed, they tried to drop anchor. So our honeymoon was cancelled on more than one occasion. We took it later than the wedding, and obviously with lockdown, we booked and it was cancelled, and we booked and it was cancelled. So around about this time last year, as things like Facebook memories keep reminding us, we were supposed to be on honeymoon, and I kept making, as Ben did, social media posts about our fake honeymoon. And I wrote this poem for the Right Where We Are Now website, which is capturing snapshots of the pandemic on a day-to-day basis. So this was one of those. The cancelled honeymoon. We dream of azure, so I paint our rented gardens, rotten shed doors and table, summer sky blue, and make Greek salad. We sit al fresco, and though it isn't the same, there is a heat wave. It is closer than we hoped. Each day I tweet our hashtag fake honeymoon, hashtag Corfu, swimming, mountain hiking, olive groves, boat trips, the high-speed hydrofoil to Albania, the waiter whose eye I caught, smashed plates, while instead we sofa sit, listen to the news, refund pending as rain buckets. The husband researches fresh destinations, Cuba, Greece. I lose track of my furloughed days. Our plans for May involved more cocktails, more nudity, not this endless scrolling, this disappointment as we clink Retsina, TripAdvise, better times. Okay, so I'm just going to do 3 more, slightly longer set, this one, because it's a longer section, the second one. So I don't know if you remember the government skills test that we were advised to do, especially if you were creative over the last year, to find a new career to train in, where it had a few faults. It told actors to retrain as actors. It thought hospitality was a very good business to be getting into. And it told lots of artists, including myself, that we should retrain as professional boxers. So that's what I did. Oh, and the quote, I'm not going to sing it, but the quote at the start's from Bugsy Malone. So you want to be a boxer. Fight and fight some more until you know the world is ready to receive you. In my school production of Bugsy Malone, I played a down and out, not Leroy the champion. Now, thanks to the government skills test, I am outside, retraining as a professional boxer in my rented garden, preparing. This gypsy queen will rise like the gypsy king. Can you see me in my gym kit and pigtails, feet moving with dancer's muscle memory to ballet second position, a demi-plie into steady 2 o'clock, the back heel lifting from the ground. Imagine this patio, a ring. See me swivel, barless on my hips, bandage cloth around poet hands, don the red gloves, ready. I have to mean business in my new role. I learn to jab, to left hook, to right uppercut, my cross fists thumping. The training pads. I learn my best angles, the power of the turn, the clean points of contact for the win. I learn to hide my face, to block, to slip, to duck the washing line. Skills useful in this new age. Watch me do my Rocky montage. There I am, skipping rope. Here, running up snowy steps outside City Hall. There, wiping sweat from my brow at the end of my session. Someone watching says, eyes of a killer, watch her. My trainer looks at me, sees an opponent, nods. So this one's from when we actually did get to take our honeymoon, and it was a very strange experience and very sparse. There was hardly any people around at all, which meant I got the swimming pools completely to myself. And I love to swim. It's one of the things I'd missed the most. So the swallows and the swimming. At dusk, I have the pool to myself, the panoramic view, until the swallow show joins me for a parabolic dive dip, beating me to a pre-dinner drink. In chlorinated, light rippling blue, they zip, loop and swoop from edge to edge as I breaststroke to the horizon of hills and back. Such freedom, such glee. Okay, last one, which links to the title poem and probably is the sentiment of the collection too. All I have. They are still there, the windfalls, rotting in garden waste bags, still awaiting being taken to the tip, months after the asking. The grass is getting taller. The few neighbourhood cats who'd been invisible here until recently now fight over mice, voles, rats I don't want to know. And two magpies, two urban crows visit us like an ark. Some days it doesn't rain and I stand and I take in all I have, despite everything. That's it.
Beautiful. I just love that poem. I love it so much. And I think there's so much hope and joy in this section, despite, the poems about lockdown and the difficulties faced. That's something that's really uplifted about it. And I wanted to start off in our second section of questions, just to ask you to talk about the title a little bit more, Windfalls. Because we heard the title poem where it's literally about fallen fruit, and the fallen fruit come a few times, but it has quite a few different meanings, and I wondered if you could explain those for us.
Yeah, so there are two main definitions of windfalls. One, it's basically fallen fruit or things blown down by the wind, which I kind of took to mean also people kind of knocked down by events that might happen in their life as well. So I've kind of read it a bit more widely there, but also unexpected gains and advantages. But they might not necessarily be the narrators. They might be happening over the garden fence, for example. So other people not appreciating those gains or advantages, I guess. The bigger ones. I mean, a lot of the book is about the minutiae, and the things that are important, because I think the small things are much more important than the big in life anyway. But yeah, just that observation of other people having those big gains and perhaps not really appreciating what they have.
Yeah. And there are these unexpected moments of joy that feel like windfalls, like in the poems as well, like in that last poem, all I have, that suddenly it's like turning around and realizing, wow, I have a lot of wonderful things in my life. And it's such a lovely sentiment, and one that I think we could all really do with and can empathize with at the moment, especially the things that we've been going through. And I also wondered if there was an aspect to it as well of kind of the balloon girl, Mademoiselle Albertina, right? And how she sort of like takes this leap of wanting to fly, and okay, she it's not absolutely successful, but it's really beautiful because she's willing to take a risk, and she's willing to to try and have an adventure. And I wondered if that was part of the collection as well.
Oh, absolutely. She's a complete heroine to me. I mean, it was just really bad luck that she landed in the water for her. But like, what a job, you know. And especially like if she had that heroine's horse and carriage welcome back. I think sometimes you have to leap in life. And hope you land softly, but you don't always, but you never get all the rich experience of life if you don't take these leaps sometimes. So yeah, but sometimes you can fall hardly, trust me, I know.
I have a sense of that too, that it's about risk taking despite knowing that you might not be absolutely successful, but you should try anyway, to try and live a life full of adventure. And then that's interesting in relation to the marriage poems as well, which are actually really diverse in terms of like what they write about. So we had that wonderfully erotic poem that you read, first of all, which I absolutely love. I absolutely love that poem. And then some of them are poignant. Others are about kind of shared work. Others are about supporting each other through and reassuring each other. So I wondered about how you approached those poems about marriage, and whether it was different to poems that you'd written before.
Well, marriage is a new thing to me. I've not done it before, so and we've had quite a strange couple of years of it. Really, very different. Few months to few months to few months. We had a long period where Ben was working nights, 65 hours a week, and so I'd just see him when he'd get home. And he'd be like, hi, bye. And yeah, so it kind of felt quite separate. And then there are other times when we're just around each other all the time, perhaps too much, Ben might say. He's staying very quiet. Where we were on the road and he was playing his music and occasionally I was singing with him. A very extreme couple of years for a first couple of years of marriage, I think coming to marriage later as well is quite different to when you marry young. I mean, you have certain things you're set in your ways about and certain things you're more understanding about. So I think you kind of understand the compromise a bit more that a relationship is. But we're still in many ways finding our feet because we've had a year that's been not a normal year. So yeah.
COVID year, very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess it gave a magnifying glass to the relationship because it's a lot of what I've seen. So bless him. He's been my muse.
Wonderful. Well, I just love those poems. I really enjoyed those a lot. And I feel like overall the kind of spirit of the collection, I was sitting here thinking about it as you were reading. And I was thinking how everything you write about, whether it's, relationships with people or with the outside world, with nature, it all seems to be imbued with this wonderful life and joy and sensuality. And I feel like that is something which is really unique and beautiful about your writing, and something that I've really appreciated again today while you've been reading. So thank you so much for that. I just want to open it up at this point for questions. And I was actually thinking of making it now so that people can unmute as well in case you want to make a comment, or so you can now unmute yourself. So if you want to make a comment or ask a question, we'd love that. Or if you just want to have a bit of a chat to Susie as well, that would be lovely too. Because I can see a lot of people here from our community in Wales.
You'd love that image of Ben Mooningry and Elizabeth.
Yeah, there's some great comments. There'd be some great comments about, yeah, definitely.
Sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat.
Yeah, that's very good. And I like George's comment, which is saying about how relatable and beautifully crafted the poems are. And so much attention is paid to human psychology throughout. And I think that's absolutely right. And we haven't talked very much about form actually either. And something that I really like about your work is how you use couplets and tercets, so 2-line and 3-line stanzas a lot, and different kinds of some experiments that you did in this collection were using slashes as well to break up text, which was really interesting. So I wondered, how did you approach form in this collection?
Yeah, I played around a bit more, I guess. Couplets was just something with the Carnival Boyfriends, it seemed to make sense with the dating, with the kind of the couple. It just seemed to work. So a lot of those just came out in couplets, to the point that I was sick of writing couplets for a while. I was trying to break out of it desperately. And then I guess the prose poems were more, I feel like I'm desperately neglecting fiction. And it wasn't that trying to write fiction, but it was a form that I'd been interested in before. I really like Hyben, for example, as well, and I've written a few prose poems in the past. That I was just getting interested in, and Carrietta had a new prose poetry group, and I was reading a bit more. And I wanted there to be a bit more variety in the collection as well, I think, of form, because as a rule, I tend to write more free form than very fixed form poetry. So I was trying to kind of instill some sort of rules here and there on it.
Yeah, yeah, and they were kind of, your phrasing is absolutely beautiful. It's very honed and crafted and beautiful, and the way you put things always feels just right. So I think those are things that I really admire about the way you write as well. And of course, you're also a brilliant editor yourself. You were, in fact, well, my editor at Parthian, which is wonderful.
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah.
Some people might disagree.
And I wonder, like, if you've got any thoughts for poets coming up now, or who are, you know, perhaps in the community here, about, you know, how to go about, you know, getting published, or what, how, any tips at all on publishing?
Yeah, I think like it's a tougher market at the moment, especially because of COVID, because there's such a backlog at journals, and because also more people are producing poetry, have had the time to put collections in to submit, and there's no more staff. In fact, there's generally less hours at every publisher that's an indie publisher, trying to keep on top of all of that at the moment. So I think like the advice is still the same, which I'll give in a minute, but I'm just going to like preface it with the fact that it is harder at the moment, and just to give yourself a bit of a break about that just to know that, like, to keep persevering, because just because it is harder, it's going to hopefully get better. But yeah, the usual things to do is to get published in journals, submit to competitions. Ordinarily, I'd say do like more live events, but you can do those online, of course, and get the attention of other poets or editors, especially if they're run by a journal or magazine and they've got an open mic section, or things like First Thursday, where Amy's the editor at Poetry Wales, so you might catch their eye, which is a quicker way in, at least. So when you send a letter, it's not kind of cold calling so much. But yeah, it's really building up a portfolio. Some people are lucky and they just present a collection straight out of nowhere and it's brilliant and it will get taken on, but more often than not, it will take a long time. I mean, I was writing poems from when I was a kid, and I only started publishing a few in my 20s, and my first book of poetry only came out 4 years ago. So, you know, I'm 42 this year. It can be a long
Good
slog.
age. Good age. I like that age.
It's a good age. I'm happy with my age. I feel quite comfortable in my 40s, but it can take a longer time, and I just think you have to be prepared for that longer haul. But like, it doesn't always need to be the case either. Like, it depends where you start and how proactive you are in sending your work out at that time as well. Like, some people can take to bring one book out in their lifetime, and other people are writing 3. I'm looking at Natalie Ann Holbury now, a year. So yeah, you just have to find your pace and not compare yourself to other people, really.
Yeah, oh, that's such good advice. That really is. The perseverance. It's tough. It's very tough, but I think you're absolutely right. Just to keep going and persevering is a really important thing. But just last of all, I wonder, for a final question, what would you like us, what do you hope that readers will take away from this new collection, like ultimately?
I've had to answer this a couple of times and I always forget what my answer is. Really, I just want to reach, I just hope the poems reach people. I think there's a lot about a broad range of kind of relationships and interactions, of highs and lows in life. And if one of those poems reaches someone at the right time, then I've done my job, I feel. Really. Yeah. That hopefully also just to feel a bit more confident that you can live a slightly different life, and though it might be rocky at times, it's possible. It's okay.
Yeah, I love that. I love that sense of, trying to live your very best life. I think that's a wonderful thing to take away from it. Thank you. So I think we're going to finish up there. But like I said, I've unmuted you. So if you want to hang around and have a chat with us, please do. But we'll officially end there. And thank you so much for coming. It was a wonderful event. I'm going to just take a moment once I finish talking and make sure that the link to the book is in the chat so you can go and order it. But thank you, Susie. It was wonderful to hear the poems. I enjoyed it so much. And thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm just going to quickly go and make sure that the link's in the chat, and you can unmute yourself and applaud if you want as well.
Okay, I've just put it in there. There we go. I've done it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
That was great.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Susie.
Thanks for coming. It's really nice to see your faces.
Hopefully we can see you in person soon and hear you
so.
read in person.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, my plan is, Claire, because all of you locals have been asking for some food, is to do something picnicky when the weather.
That would be great. That would be really nice.
Yeah. But thank you for coming for the rainy.
Bye, and thanks, Zoe. That was wonderful. Thanks. Bye.
Oh, isn't she great? Yeah, she's great. Loved it. Loved it.
Bye.